Welcome to Lethal Dose, your favorite toxicology-focused podcast where we delve into true crime cases involving drugs and poisons. My name is Venus Dineko. I'm a layperson fascinated by true crime.
My name is Kayla Woods. I'm an author and toxicologist.
Let's get started.
Yay! We're back!
Hell yeah, we're back.
Well, okay, we're back. Asterisk. We exist. We're still here. We never left. We just went on a little hiatus. And I know when people go on hiatuses, you don't believe that you'll be back. I know you've been hurt in the past, but
we aren't here to hurt you.
We aren't here to hurt you. Yeah, we're not completely back to scheduled programming, but we are going to be releasing episodes as I am doing the research as I have time. It won't be regular. It won't be on like a planned schedule. But we want to stay timely, too. So instead of, like, building up a whole season and then something comes out about white phosphorus, like, I'm just giving it to you now. So here is that episode. And we'll do...
Baby Birds Be Fed by Mother Kayla.
And we'll do more housekeeping at the end of the episode. You can hear how we've been, but I know that you've been waiting for your Lethal Dose content. So let's jump into it. White phosphorus has been in the news in the last several years because of its use in armed conflict in violation of humanitarian law and weapons conventions. Despite its explosive nature, this element was not discovered in pursuit of munitions, nor was it even used in that way for many years after its discovery. Rather, it took a journey through alchemistry, medicine, and marred the face of the Industrial Revolution before it ever lit up the sky. So phosphorus is the 15th element in the periodic table. And although its elemental form is never found in nature because of its high reactivity, phosphoric compounds are essential to life on Earth. Alongside carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, phosphorus is critical in the formation of DNA, and phosphate compounds literally granted animals the bone strength to evolve to living on land.
Okay, so kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. Kind of critical. Elemental phosphorus exists primarily in 3 common allotropes that can be produced artificially. This is black, red, and the slightly yellow white phosphorus. The elemental form was discovered in Hamburg in 1669 by an alchemist who preferred the title Herr Dr. Henning Brandt, though he was not a physician.
Yeah, so this is like alchemy? Like
Alchemy, yeah.
Medieval old-timey alchemy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Looking for the Philosopher's Stone and all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And alchemists were gross. I don't know if people are aware of that. Like, alchemists...
I was not.
They're super fucking gross. They're so gross. They're just a bunch of these, like, grubby little men. And they were willing to look for the Philosopher's Stone in any substance. They were like, it could be hiding anywhere. We could find it anywhere. And so Brandt was investigating an option that was well chronicled by other alchemists as early as the 1630s. And I fucking hate that they call it this. But it was the golden stream.
Oh my god. Okay, sure.
And if I can give these grubby, gross little men any credit, it's that researching urine actually did lead to some scientific breakthroughs, both before and after his experimentation here.
Alrighty. Thank you, Sir Dr. Brandt.
Concentrated urine was used to make the spirit of urine, which could be applied to glass as a silver compound used to make mirrors. And this silvering is why vampires can't be seen in mirrors.
Oh, okay. Well then. The more you know.
The more you know. And then later on in 1828, a German chemist, Friedrich Wöhler, synthesized the biologic molecule urea from inorganic ammonium citrate. Urea was known to exist abundantly in urine, and the fact that he was able to make the organic molecule from an inorganic starting product really turned chemistry at that point on its head, because at that time, the popular concept of vitalism said that only living organisms could make organic molecules. So they were just like, oh my gosh, mind blown. Like, we've got an organic compound from an inorganic starting material.
Okay, well, that seems like pretty profound.
Right. And so the
Yeah.
fact that he was like working with his urine in the 1600s is like,
Sure, I mean, that's beside the point.
it's gross, but I guess it did lead us somewhere, you know?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It was for nothing. It wasn't for nothing.
So Brandt was presumably distilling his own urine along with alum and saltpeter in a small furnace in his house until it was a dry solid, and then he kept heating it until the glass vessel it was in glowed red hot. Glowing fumes filled the glass, and the dry compound re-liquefied, poured out of the vessel, and released the smell of garlic into the room. I know, it's just lovely imagery here. So Brandt captured this liquid in another jar and capped it so that he could observe it as it re-solidified, but it glowed with an eerie pale green light and occasionally released a burst of flame for hours into the night.
Oh.
And this is white phosphorus.
Wow. Oh.
And luminescent discoveries were of interest to Brandt and his colleagues, so it wasn't like, he'd found nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly recent discoveries that were luminescent were the lapis-based Bologna stone in 1603, and this was the first substance to exhibit persistent luminescence. So the fact that he found something else was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Especially in an age where the only light after dark was from fire that could go out in a breeze or burn your house down, and in the meantime didn't offer that much light. And Brandt hadn't realized he'd discovered phosphorus. He, of course, was hoping that he had found the Philosopher's Stone so that he could turn base metals into gold. That was the whole point. Right. But he held on to his precious rock because it was cool, and he called it his cultus foyer, or affectionately mind foyer, so my fire or the cold fire. And he kept the secret of its origin to himself for 6 years.
No, this is my glowing pea.
Mine. I mean, he did show it to people. He just didn't tell people how he came about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at my glowing pea.
Look at it.
Marvel at it.
Yeah. And he thought people would think it was cool, and I think they did, but it didn't bring him any money. Nobody was like, I will pay you to replicate this. He did sell samples of it to other alchemists, but mostly he lived off the wealth of his first and second wives.
There it is.
One of those guys. He finally decided to share his discovery with Homburg in 1675, and that did bring him a bit of local fame. The fact that he explained the origin of this phosphorus, that did help him a little bit. He didn't share his methods with anyone, but some people kind of figured out how it happened and like how what methods he used to create the phosphorus. And so they set about creating cold fire with their own gold streams at home. And theirs were actually the only written accounts of the isolation of phosphorus in this manner, because Brandt never wrote his down.
Oh.
When Brandt became desperate for funds, he agreed to demonstrate his process to another alchemist named Kunkel, as well as Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who is probably more well known for independently creating calculus at the same time as Isaac Newton than any forays into alchemistry. After Brandt's demonstrations to these men, the alchemist published his own account in 1676, and the mathematician published his in 1678, and both neglected to mention Brandt at all. So, for a long time, we didn't know that Brandt was the person who first discovered phosphorus as an element. We thought it was either Kunkel or Leibniz. And the only reason we know about Brandt's original discovery is because of letters from his wife to Leibniz discussing Brandt's salary as an alchemist in Leibniz's employ, and these were discovered among his papers later on. The luminous substance earned the name phosphorus from the Greek word for light bearer. But an important distinction for all you chemistry students out there who I know are listening is that phosphorus isn't phosphorescent, like the Bologna stone is.
So what, for us non-chemistry students, phosphorescent means it glows or it emits light, or what is the... They both glow. So if that glow in the dark, that's luminescence. And phosphorescence is like if you're ever driving around at night and there's a sign that glows back at you, that's phosphorescence. Actually, if you were to, and I did this in college a lot because my chemistry teacher told me about this. My analytical chemistry teacher told me about this, that if you turn your headlights off momentarily,
you can watch it fade. Like, you can watch the glow fade because it's phosphorescence. So only do it on a straight shot when no one's coming.
Sure.
You know,
and
all that. But
safety first. Safety first. But interesting.
So yeah, phosphorescence requires a light source to be absorbed and then re-emitted, and that's why there's that slow glowing. Phosphorus itself is luminescent as a result of the oxidation of the rock when exposed to air, because the oxidation briefly forms hydrogen phosphate and phosphorus oxide, which both emit visible light. So they just luminesce. They just glow on their own.
Got it.
Yeah. And though phosphorus does not burn as it gives off heat, which alchemists thought was quite strange, it is highly flammable. One of Brandt's acquaintances, Daniel Kraft, demonstrated this to Robert Boyle in 1677, and what I think is a fascinating snapshot of the evolution of alchemy into chemistry, as this is the same Boyle regarded as one of the founding fathers of chemistry, whose work resulted in Boyle's law of gases, which, again, the chemistry students will be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. And everybody else is like, cool.
Who's Boyle? And why do we have laws about gases? I'm sure they're important.
They're very important. So Kraft kept his phosphorus in water until he needed it, and then dried it off and exposed it to gunpowder. And that was a fairly common practice because when it's in water, it's not exposed to air, and so it can't oxidize. It doesn't catch fire. It doesn't glow. You can kind of keep it sort of inert in water.
Okay.
So he took it out, he exposed it to gunpowder, and then it ignited because it came in contact with oxygen, it gave off a little flames, and he ignited the gunpowder. Boyle immediately began thinking about the applications of this. It could be used for hunting deep-sea fish. It could be used to ignite gunpowder safely on boats without fire that, boats are made of wood. And so he's set to manufacturing phosphorus himself. And he managed to recreate solid phosphorus, but also a more impure liquid phosphorus, which, because he was an alchemist before he was a chemist, he tasted, and he found that it was neither alkaline nor acidic. And it was probably still mostly urine, is my guess.
Nice.
Chemists are so weird, like, especially organic chemists. I definitely had a professor who, kind of lamented that we knew it was unsafe to taste things in the organic chem lab. And so at one point I asked him, I was like, if you were a chemist in the 1700s, you'd be tasting this, wouldn't you? And he was like, hell yeah, I would.
I mean, that's scary. But it's because of chemists that we know that it's scary, right?
Yeah. Well, it's because of men who, they heat their urine until it glows, and then they're like, I wonder what that tastes like. And it's like, what is wrong with you? Are you okay?
Yeah, do you get help?
Boyle also tasted the water that his phosphorus was kept in.
Oh.
And he said it tasted like sea salt and sulfuric acid, because he knows what sulfuric acid tastes like.
I was just going to say, should you know what sulfuric acid tastes like? Because I feel like that's something that should be left to the imagination.
I guess if you're Robert Boyle, you know what it tastes like.
Okay, fair enough.
He boiled this water, and it created a semi-solid that we now know as phosphoric acid. And then he melted this solid and found that it created long threads of polyphosphoric acids, which are now used in modern times for a number of industrial applications.
Oh.
Yeah. He studied phosphorus extensively. Boyle exposed it to different solvents and finally published an article on his findings in 1682. But the article in which he described how he manufactured phosphorus initially was not published until after his death in 1694. He asked for it to be published posthumously, and I think this is because he was ashamed of the alchemical origins of the process, which utilized the infamous golden stream, since he came to be such a well-renowned chemist who came up with the law of gases.
Right. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of a big deal. I don't need them to know that I was playing with pee.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's valid, I think. I mean, but maybe people would have been like, yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Maybe. Or maybe they would have been like, wow, you were really a product of your time. It likely comes as no surprise to listeners that phosphorus quickly entered the pharmacopoeia and found medical applications. Sure, it was highly flammable and made from urine, but it was also made from urine, and so that's from the body. Maybe putting it back in the body could be helpful, you know?
Okay, sure. Because I love putting my pee back where it came from.
Well, there's also the fact that it created its own light source, and this added to the medical legitimacy because they were like, maybe it's the vital flame of life. Right? We were just grasping at straws back then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a little, like, yeah, sure.
So, phosphorus was first sold as a medicine in 1710 by a German apothecary named Johann Link. And Link sold Kunkel's pills containing 200 milligrams of phosphorus, which he claimed could treat colic, asthmatic fevers, tetanus, apoplexy, and gout. To prevent the pills from bursting into flame when exposed to air, Link coated them in silver nitrate. When briefly exposed to skin, silver nitrate will stain it purple, black, or brown, and when ingested, it is both corrosive and toxic.
Fantastic.
And phosphorus itself is unsurprisingly toxic, and doses as low as 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight can be fatal.
And is that ingested, or can that also be, like, absorbed?
Well, we'll talk about dermal applications of phosphorus.
Because that's what that's
Yeah.
kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, this is just when you ingest it orally, like in a pill form. And the only reason that these 200 milligram pills probably didn't kill anyone is that Link was using an impure form, and the silver coating he put on them slowed the oxidation of phosphorus rather than stopping it altogether.
Okay.
So the phosphorus converted to like harmless oxides, and its poisonous metal shell. It probably goes without saying that phosphorus cannot be used to treat any of the ailments that Kunkel's pills were sold for. And yet, even after the pills stopped being manufactured upon Link's death, it continued to be used as a medicine. In 1719, Professor Johann Thomas Hensing discovered that the human brain contained a surprisingly high amount of phosphorus, more than any other organ, actually. And so Hensing figured that phosphorus must be good for the brain.
Oh, no.
This was strengthened in 1730 when a man named Dr. Kramer determined that phosphorus could be used to treat epilepsy and melancholia. And the first medical accounts came in 1751, claiming phosphorus could cure certain fevers, malaria, and typhus. In 1796, Dr. Alphonse Leroy saw a patient on her deathbed from tuberculosis asking for anything to help. She was desperate. And so he decided to try just giving her the water that some phosphorus had been stored in. Why? I don't know. Maybe he was like, she's asking for anything. Maybe he had read some...
we'll try it.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So she did improve briefly, allegedly, and then died 15 days later. So it's like, how much did she improve?
Mm-hmm.
But he gave the same water to other TB patients and said that they also responded positively. I don't know if they also died within, 2 weeks or so.
2 weeks, yeah.
But Leroy wanted to be kind of scientific, and so he decided he was going to test a 200 milligram phosphorus pill on himself, a healthy man, and record the effects.
For 2 hours, he was in a critical situation and took quantities of cold water until the uneasiness passed off. His urine became very red. On the following morning, his muscular power doubled and he experienced an almost intolerable venereal irritation.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh no.
He also experienced nausea, thirst, and excitement. So it seems like he poisoned himself and then he felt better. What a great cure.
Yeah.
Compared to how bad I felt, I feel great now.
Wow.
For a more potent brew, patients could drink almond oil or brandy in which the phosphorus had been stored because it's more soluble in those liquids than in water. And
fantastic.
In this way, even just the liquid that it had been stored in could deal a fatal dose. And oral poisoning with white phosphorus is a truly horrible kind of death. Most people vomit in the hours following an acute dose, but this vomiting can last for 2 days alongside severe abdominal cramping. The irritating effects of phosphorus and bile can lead to erosion of the mucosa of the GI tract and GI hemorrhage, and so victims vomit blood and pieces of their mucosa, which luminesce and smell of garlic. Necrosis of the GI tract has also been observed, and of course, all of this causes burning and warmth in the throat and abdomen alongside extreme thirst. Except in severely acute exposure cases, these GI effects are just the first stage of fatal white phosphorus poisoning. In the second stage, patients appear to improve. In the third and final state, which can last up to 3 weeks, victims experience multi-organ failure. Autopsied victims showed severe damage to the liver, kidney, brain, and or the cardiovascular system. The liver and kidney damage induced hypoglycemia, the brain damage caused delirium, psychosis, and hallucinations, and the vascular collapse led to a pale or blue coloration of the skin as victims slowly suffocated prior to falling into a coma and dying.
This all sounds awful. Terrible time. I mean, it's like what makes it the worst actually is because, like, oh my gosh, I'm getting better.
I hate that.
JK, you're gonna die.
I know. I hate that. I hate that so much. I know there's a mushroom that causes that too, and that's just like, that's so mean.
That's not, it's cruel. It's
on like
cruel.
A truly cosmic level. That's cruel.
Yes.
But the only difference between a poison and a medicine, of course, is the dose.
She said the thing, you guys.
To prevent their patients from dying, physicians decreased their dosages to a mere 3 milligrams or to sub-milligram doses by the beginning of the 20th century. Because, of course, they were still prescribing it. It's not like we're going to stop prescribing it.
Yeah, but why? Like, did...
Okay, sure. So, as I said, phosphorus in bone is essential to, like, evolution, right?
Right.
And so there is a lot of it in our bones. And when it was given to children suffering from rickets, it actually did help them with their rickets.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense.
Right. And so we held on to it because we were like, well, it is working in like
it helps the rickety children.
Yeah. Even into the 1950s, it was prescribed at lower levels as a brain tonic for hysteria and melancholia, stroke, alcoholism, migraine, epilepsy, TB, cataracts, glaucoma, toothache, and as an aphrodisiac. And these are not dissimilar to the historic uses I already mentioned, and that may be because there was actually something to the prescription, kind of like with the rickets. Though I have to believe it was more likely to see actual effects at lower doses because otherwise you're just poisoning people. In the gut, phosphorus oxidizes to phosphate, which is an essential electrolyte for many bodily functions. And I also mentioned above that elemental phosphate isn't found in nature. And so when I said that the body, and especially the brain and the bones, contains a lot of phosphorus, that's total phosphorus, including what's bound up in phosphate. So if we were to take a whole body and analyze it for phosphorus, we would end up with a certain total level. But if you could break it down and ask where did it come from, a lot of it would come from phosphate. It wouldn't come from elemental phosphorus, right? But we would just say, here's how much phosphorus. Low phosphate, or hypophosphatemia, can cause rickets because it causes vitamin D deficiency. It also causes muscle pain and weakness, bone pain, altered mental status, respiratory and heart failure, low energy, and seizures. And low phosphate can be caused by alcoholism and diabetes. And so treating all of these conditions with phosphorus kind of made sense, like, you know, into the 20th century.
I mean, sure, I could see how it could make sense.
Right. But using white phosphorus is the part that doesn't make sense. Because hypophosphatemia can usually be treated with diet. Eggs, chicken, pork, and organ meats, dairy products, and nuts and seeds are all high in phosphorus-containing compounds and are fairly common across the world, even in places that experience food shortage. Rickets is caused by a malabsorption of vitamin D, calcium, or phosphorus, and sometimes vitamin D supplements are prescribed. But even then, it's mostly treated by diet. So there really was no need to ever prescribe a compound that could ignite when exposed to air and had to be taken in small doses as to not be fatal. And the availability of these drugs made it easier for people to accidentally overdose because, you might tell people take 3 milligrams, but they might think, not knowing the history of this thing, some is good, some more is better, right? And then
I want to feel good now.
Right. Right. And so there was the possibility of accidental overdose, or, as always, there's the possibility of intentional overdose. This was accomplished with OTC supplements as well as rat poison and match heads, which were far less conspicuous to obtain.
Oh.
Yeah. The earliest matches, for more context, let's go back in history again. The earliest matches were invented in China in the 6th century CE by impregnating pine sticks with sulfur, which, like phosphorus, also readily catches fire when applied to an already hot surface. In the 18th century, a French alchemist attempting to find an alternative to gunpowder created a mixture of sugar and potassium chlorate that were explosive if ground together, but stable as a dried paste. When applied to the tips of sticks, they only needed a drop of sulfuric acid to ignite. And this was a popular match style for many years, despite the fact that the matches needed to be sold with a bottle of concentrated sulfuric acid.
I was just gonna ask, like, what? You have to have a bottle of acid to get your matches to work?
Yeah.
Cool.
What
could go wrong?
Convenient. Yeah.
What could go wrong?
So the first friction matches were made by an English pharmacist in 1825, who was making a mixture of potassium chlorate and antimony sulfide for a customer. Pharmacists really just made everything. And there's a reason they're just called chemists overseas, because it was actually really a common preparation for these guys to be making that was a safer alternative to dynamite.
Oh.
Yeah. So the chemist, John Walker, he wasn't at all surprised, I don't think, when he accidentally stepped on a drop of this mixture that landed on the floor and it lit on fire. Maybe he was more surprised that it burnt rather than exploding, but... And he was already, kind of experimenting with friction matches or chlorate matches, and so the invention came to him fairly intuitively, if this is indeed how it happened. He began selling his matches in 1827 in a box of 100 with a piece of sandpaper on the side, pretty similar to what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
The matches themselves were potassium chlorate and antimony sulfide, along with some gum arabic and iron oxide. But they didn't really take off. In the first 2 years, he sold maybe 200 boxes.
Oh, that's it?
Right. But it only took one match demonstrated by Michael Faraday, another, who's who in this story. And if you don't know who he is, it's fine. He was mostly a physicist. But he was demonstrating this match to an enterprising chemist at an 1829 lecture in London, and the idea got stolen.
Ugh.
That's just the whole story of phosphorus, is that one guy sees it and another guy...
And another guy snags it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, damn.
So
that's not cute.
No. An attendee named Samuel Jones began making his own matches, also using potassium chlorate and antimony sulfide, and he called these lucifers. His idea was then picked up by a shopkeeper named G.F. Watts, who named his product Watts Chlorate Lucifer Matches. While Walker and Jones both had the issue of their matches being tricky to ignite and sometimes sending sparks out when struck, Watts improved upon the design by dipping his match heads into molten sulfur before applying the chlorate sulfide paste. The first matches, or lucifers, to use phosphorus were invented in the 1830s. By this time, phosphorus is being manufactured commercially by reducing animal bones rather than using urine. These new matches contained 20% white phosphorus, 15% sulfur, 30% potassium chlorate, and the rest was chalk and glue. Eventually, manufacturers realized they didn't need that much phosphorus, which was kind of expensive, and only about 1 milligram was required per match. In other words, around 25,000 could be produced with just an ounce of phosphorus.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot more economical.
Mm-hmm.
They still ignited with ease when struck just about anywhere or walked on. And even just shaking a box of matches or leaving them in direct sunlight could cause them to ignite.
That's what I thought would happen when I was a kid. I thought that. Like, my grandma had a huge box of matches for the fireplace, and I always thought, like, oh my God, they look at these too hard and they're going to ignite. Like, impending doom.
See, we have these thoughts as kids, and these guys back then are just like, it's fine. Just
It's fine. What could happen?
don't run with them in your pocket, I guess. I don't know. In 1845, the first red phosphorus was produced by heating white phosphorus in a sealed glass bulb at a high temperature for several days. Aside from being a different color, the resulting compound was stable in air, and so was placed on the outside of the matchbox, which was unlikely to be sucked on by unsupervised children, as was clearly becoming a problem. Ground glass was added to the phosphorus to provide friction, and while the matches were no longer strike anywhere, they were much safer for consumers. And red phosphorus was cheaper to use, as 10 pounds of it was enough for 250,000 matchbox strike panels.
Okay.
By 1880, Bryant in Maine, Great Britain, which was the world's largest producer of safety matches, was churning out 60 billion matches a year. Most of which were still the Strike Anywhere lucifers, and these were overwhelmingly preferred by both the company and were purchased 6 times more than safety matches by consumers. At this point in the Industrial Revolution, factories could churn out 14 million matches a day with a team of 9 people.
Holy output, Batman.
I know. Of course, these people weren't paid very well because the company wanted to profit on boxes of matches essentially sold at 1,250 matches per penny. So they hired people they didn't have to pay respectable wages, like young women, teenagers, and poor Jewish refugees from Eastern Europe. The workers, of course, knew that they deserved better, and in 1888, several thousand workers staged their first strike against the company for higher wages. They were attacked by police and responded by throwing stones. Queen Victoria heard about the riot and wrote to the Prime Minister, who saw to it that a tax on matches that had been imposed at the time was lifted, and this encouraged the company to raise wages without a loss to their bottom line, because, of course, they couldn't just raise wages.
No, we have to still make sure that the shareholders are okay. Like, duh.
And what really surprised me about this whole thing is that apparently matchmaking was a job that could be done as a work-from-home job in the late 19th century.
Oh, we had remote production. Okay.
We did. Letting people work outside of the factory kept overhead down, and it allowed the company to work around restrictions on working hours and safety conditions. So that's unsurprising.
Yeah.
What happened was they would make the matches at the company, and then home workers constructed the match boxes, filled them, and wrapped them into packs of 12.
Okay, that makes way more sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes way more sense than them, like, actually. I was like, man, they just, like, gave them, like, the phosphorus and all the, and, like, you got this, Billy.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
But these from-home workers were only paid per bundles of 144 boxes. And they often had to pay for the glue to glue the boxes together themselves. In just one instance of a completely preventable tragedy, a fire broke out in a home of matchmakers around Christmas 1897 and quickly spread to the matches, the cardboard, the paper, and the glue, making it impossible for 39-year-old Sarah Jarvis and her 9 children to escape. The youngest child was 8 months, and the oldest was 16. Sarah's husband, also a matchmaker, was only not home at the time because he was in the hospital with tuberculosis and died the day after the fire.
Oh my gosh, what a tragedy.
I know. Like, the late 19th century was not a good time to be alive.
No, not really. Would not go back if I was given the option.
No.
But man, the poor family and then the poor husband, like, had he had survived that, like, honestly, maybe it was his time.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just better that it was it, because gosh.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Yeah. And of course, working in the factories wasn't much better. Workers there also had to pay for materials. The female workers sometimes paid the wages of their male counterparts.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they, like, had to, I think it was, like, grown women and, like, teenage boys, and the boys would, like, bring them supplies, and they would have to, like, pay them, like, a farrier charge for, like, bringing them supplies. It was convoluted and dumb. It was not at all necessary. And of course, the safety in the factory wasn't regulated either. Now, we haven't discussed it much here before, but anyone familiar with the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire or the story of the Radium Girls, which is for sure a future episode, shouldn't be surprised at that. In fact, the matchmakers were injured by their work much like the Radium Girls. In the musical The Match Girls, the employees of Bryant and May open the show with a song that goes,
"Our special beauty cream, we look a proper dream, for we are minus a jar. Governors don't charge a fee, give it away for free. Phosphorus, phosphorus."
These young, mostly female workers suffered from a corrosive condition called phosphorus necrosis, or Phosphie jaw. It caused abscesses of the gums and teeth that eroded even the jawbone itself, leading to a facial disfigurement and meningitis or other fatal brain damage in some cases.
Oh my, like, that's pretty rough. Like, not only the abscesses, but we're getting meningitis on top of it. Like,
yeah, it's just literally eating holes in your head.
Yeah, yikes.
One patient described the pain as akin to a file constantly rasping away at their mouth. And the dark, afflicted gums glowed a luminescent green. And the condition was documented as early as 1838, the same decade that phosphorus was introduced to matchsticks. By 1844, a single physician in Vienna had identified 22 cases of Phosphie jaw in match workers, which takes about 5 years to manifest after the initial exposure.
Oh, no. So, like, they didn't realize what was causing this. Like, they didn't know that this was going to cause an issue in 5 years.
Not necessarily. I think by 1844, Bryant and May might have known because at Bryant and May in London alone, there were 51 cases between 1847 and 1867, and 9 of those died. So, like, they were catching on, right? The average age of the workers killed by this disease or the surgery to save them was 32 years old.
I mean, which is young. That's young, but it's not, like, it's still, like, young even for old-timey standards.
Yes, absolutely. You did not need to
Because we're not
die
in the
at
medieval
32.
ages anymore, where you live to be, like, 26. You know what I mean? Like, so, oh my gosh.
And of course, 9 died over 20 years at the largest matchmaker, right? And so listeners might realize that not all the workers were impacted. And actually very few were. Approximately 1 in 20 individuals exposed to white phosphorus via inhalation developed it. More severe cases of exposure developed a chronic phlegmy cough from Phosphie lung, or anemia from Phosphie marrow, or seizures from Phosphie lung. And even Phosphie jaw itself was not simply an affliction of the mouth. It was noted in the 19th century that matchmakers were also unusually susceptible to low-impact fractures in the femur. And this is part of the Phosphie marrow. Originally, it was theorized that poor oral hygiene led to Phosphie jaw, and that it was initiated by mucosal contact with airborne phosphorus fumes, but that didn't explain the fragile bones elsewhere. However, the passage of time and the continued study of phosphate compounds on bones suggests that both Phosphie jaw and fragile femurs were caused by the inhalation of bisphosphonate, or pyrophosphonic acid fumes, which were absorbed into the blood and caused systemic rather than localized damage. Still, the numbers sick in Vienna and the disease presentation was startling enough that the Austrian government quickly set up a commission to improve the 7 factories in Vienna, which did come up with suggestions that were never implemented. Similarly, the Queen's Privy Council commissioned a report in 1862, but no one acted on it. The workers at greatest risk for developing Phosphie jaw were the men who worked with the wet composite for the match heads. Fumes from this composite filled the air, and they would work in these fumes for up to 10 hours every day, which, based on some rough estimates, is maybe 2 to 12 times higher than the modern workplace regulations in the U.S., which allow for an 8-hour day exposure.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I need to say this to our audience, but regulation and unions are good. I don't think I mentioned it enough last time we talked about food safety and like food regulation and worker safety, like with the jungle and everything, which was written to be like, hey, you should unionize, not to be like, hey, there's people meat in your sausage. And everybody was like, oh, God, there's people meat in the
People
sausage?
eating my sausage.
But it's not enough to just think about the safety of the consumer and the fact that babies are sucking on match heads. Like, we also have to consider the safety of the people dealing with large amounts of chemicals for long periods.
Yeah.
In 1857, a surgeon described how he removed the entire lower jaw from a 16-year-old match worker named Cornelia, who spent 8 hours a day at a New York factory beginning when she was just 14 years old. Cornelia first complained of a toothache and swelling on the right side of her face. Her gums were lanced, and she had a tooth extracted, but the swelling continued to worsen until her face ripped open beneath her jaw and continuously leaked pus. Even despite the horrible pain she must have been in, and likely knowing the cause of her ailment by 1857, she had to keep working at the factory until a week before she was admitted to the hospital. The writing surgeon chose to operate to remove the dead bone on the right side of her face without anesthetic. He used a chainsaw to separate the dead from healthy bone, but the chainsaw broke, so he had to resort to pulling her jaw out of her face with forceps. And I have
Poor Cornelia.
I have some
my
pictures
gosh.
here. If you would like to describe them, I have pictures of Cornelia and her jawbone and also the chainsaw that was used because listeners might be a little bit confused by that description.
Yeah, so the chainsaw looks much more mechanical, like tiny mechanical than a giant chainsaw for a tree. Like this seems like handheld almost.
Yeah. Handheld and like a handheld whisk almost.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And her jaw is like missing pieces, and it also looks like malformed in some way. Like it looks like it's expanded. Am I like wrong in that? Like I haven't looked at a jaw.
Yeah, I mean,
in a minute, but
it does seem
it seems like it's like big.
there were abscesses, I think, in the bone, and I think that's what you're seeing. And then like there is a lot of missing teeth and like missing sections, and And how does her face look?
Swollen AF. She's got like with peace and love potato face.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what?
like a bad case. Like,
but honestly, like considering she doesn't have any lower jaw, like I can't help but
wait, this is
think-
after?
Yeah, this is after the operation. She looks pretty good considering.
She looks great considering she doesn't have half a jaw. I thought that this was like she was swollen from before.
No, this is her being swollen from being operated on without anesthetic and probably still
Yeah,
having
that's
some-
rough.
Yeah.
But you can't tell in this photo. You can't tell that she doesn't have a jaw.
No. Like, I mean, all I think of.
That's why I thought it was a before.
Yeah, all I think of when like there's surgeries where people don't have jaws or like their jaw has to be removed, Radium Girls style, is like Invisible Monsters.
That's
by
all I
Chuck
think of
Palahniuk.
too.
Yeah,
like
and I know she
like, just gone.
Yeah, well, and she like blew her face off, so she didn't
Fair.
have like anything. But like that's what I think of, where it's just like upper lip to neck, But like she's a bit more defined than you would think without a jaw.
Definitely, and I still can't believe that that's with no jaw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so did she survive the surgery?
She did. So
okay.
after a week, Cornelia's wound healed, but the left side of her jaw was now diseased and pussing. And so the rest of her jaw was removed, and that's why we have a drawing of the whole jaw. And this time, the doctor gave her 20 drops of laudanum to sleep. So for some reason, she was
generous.
I know. After the operation, she was given 4 ounces of wine a day, along with a lead and opium wash.
Never take me back here. Never take me here.
It's so funny. I mean, that's clearly like antiseptic and a painkiller, but it's just like, oh my.
Right.
Oh my.
I know. It's like the opium wash, fine. Sure. I'll take it. But the lead wash, maybe leave that part out and just give me the opium, thanks.
Yeah. So apparently, she maintained use of her tongue and mouth and the doctor considered her as having recovered well. And honestly, hers is a pretty good story. She didn't suffer for that long. She also presented pretty early. It did not take her 5 years to present, so maybe it's that she was a child or something like that. And, according to the doctor, she allegedly recovered. But not everyone was so lucky. Many workers suffered for years before and after surgeries, and some lived so long in pain that they chose to kill themselves than to painfully deteriorate.
Oh, fuck.
In fact, Sweden actually had the world's largest matchmaking industry, but their factories were largely automated, so Phosphorus was rare. When their parliament debated regulations, it wasn't because of high numbers of afflicted people, but because of the high numbers of suicides among the afflicted.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. The 1888 strike against Bryant and May also demanded that the company stop using hazardous white phosphorus in the production of matches and instead use the much industrially safer red phosphorus. And this demand was not met. Red phosphorus was more expensive to use, and people wanted their strike anywhere matches rather than red phosphorus safety matches. The company did not offer care through a company doctor, who, I probably wouldn't trust either. Can you hear Willow?
Hi, Willow.
All right, I need to let her out. And employees had their wages cut off if they went to a different doctor. In the 1890s, more regulations were enforced regarding ventilation and hygiene, and British companies had to report cases of phossy jaw or else face a small fine. The Salvation Army built a factory in England that only used red phosphorus, seeking to show that a safe matchmaking operation was not only possible but profitable. But this was a single company attempting to do better. It was not until the Berne Convention of 1906 in Switzerland that the use of white phosphorus for matches was outlawed in every country except the U.S. Britain completely outlawed them after December 31st, 1910, but it took until 1925 for the U.S. to finally join their contemporaries after they were pressured to do so by the League of Nations.
The League of Nations had to step in and talk to us about our matches?
Yeah, like okay, you guys. You're not exactly known for your safety now.
Oh my gosh. Embarrassing.
Embarrassing. Yeah. I mean, that's just so American, though, that
a little bit.
Yeah. But matches were not the only product made with white phosphorus. It was also used in the manufacture of fireworks and munitions. The first account of intentional bombings with white phosphorus munitions that I could find was carried out by the Irish nationalist group the Fenians, rather than by state-sanctioned armed forces. In November 1867, the Fenians accidentally caused an explosion at a courthouse in Dublin. They were manufacturing grenades with a white phosphorus-based mixture they called Fenian fire, a version of the petroleum-based Greek fire used by the Byzantines. The Fenians were apparently manufacturing these bombs at a warehouse in Dublin to carry out assassinations of informers, though they typically preferred dynamite to carry out their attacks. In 1882, the advent of electric furnaces allowed phosphorus to be extracted continuously and in large amounts from phosphate ore. Its availability in large quantities allowed it to be exploited by the armed forces of nations, particularly Britain in World War I. Rather than being used in incendiary devices, it was mainly used to create dense white smoke screens on the Western Front that was difficult to extinguish, could reignite if not fully smothered, and would glow in the dark to help with illumination and tracing locations of the enemy. Although the bombs were used as incendiary devices against enemies, including when the British dropped white phosphorus bombs onto Kurdish villagers. And this would be far from the last time that the people of this region would be subject to white phosphorus.
I can already tell this is where it gets dark.
It's getting dark. Yeah, it's going to get way dark. Yeah.
Okay.
The smoke can blister skin and irritate mucous membranes, but phosphorus bombs were and still are horrifying creations that sprayed molten phosphorus that adheres to clothing and skin, setting fire to both and causing deep burns and tissue necrosis depending on how long it's in contact with the skin, and also drives metal fragments into soft tissues. Yeah. These kinds of third-degree burns are enough to cause death, with no contribution from the toxic effects of white phosphorus, and this is usually within 18 to 24 hours. Survivors of phosphorus burns heal more slowly than from non-phosphorus third-degree burns, perhaps because they are not simply burned, but also corroded by the phosphorus pentoxide generated by oxidizing white phosphorus.
Oh my gosh, this sounds awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you were asking about dermal exposure, I mean, it does, like, have some additional oomph behind it that isn't necessarily toxic, but also I'll also talk about how it is toxic dermally as well. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, this sounds like awful. Like actually awful.
Mauser bullets were impregnated with a small amount of phosphorus. Yes, allowing them to explode on impact and cause massive damage to hydrogen-filled airships.
Oh, fuck.
When they explode, they also continue to burn until all available oxygen is consumed.
So it sucks up like all the air in the airship?
Yep. It just burns everything. And we're going to be talking about Hamburg soon, and just try to keep as much of this in mind as you can when we talk about Hamburg.
Okay.
So, phosphorus pentoxide is a severe pulmonary irritant which can cause acute respiratory inflammation, edema, and pneumonia. So if the oxygen isn't being sucked out of the room, the air in the room is being filled with this. Irritation can begin within 2 to 15 minutes of exposure and produces coughing, nose irritation, tightness of the chest, and edema of the larynx and vocal cords alongside headaches. Severe exposures can include weakness, dry cough, bronchitis, a clicking in the lungs, tender and enlarged liver, and elevated white blood cell count. And there's no treatment for toxic exposure to white phosphorus smoke. Death appears to be from respiratory tract damage, which has been shown in studied mice to produce a thick mucus discharge capable of asphyxia. In non-fatal exposures, laryngitis can last for several months, but there have been no accounts of totally irreversible effects that I could find. What I do think is strange is that given the history of extensive use of white phosphorus by the militaries of the world since World War I, there doesn't appear to be that much information on human exposure. You would think that there would be, like, military case studies or like, something out there. And there's also, like, a really well-documented use of white phosphorus, where if you read anything, they're like, oh yeah, white phosphorus has been used in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, where it was used mostly for the smoke screens because they had napalm, so they didn't also need it as an incendiary device. But they don't talk a lot about it. There was very little I could read up about it, even in the military articles and books that I found. Like, it seems to be an open secret that no one wants to talk about, and that's kind of interesting.
That's what I'm just going to say. It's like by design, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So World War I was known as the Chemists' War. It was during this conflict that poison gases such as mustard and chlorine were first deployed in combat. And we'd need an entire episode or two to fully cover those. But suffice to say that what we did was pretty deplorable. It led to the Geneva Gas Protocol of 1925 that prohibited, quote, the use in war of asphyxiating, poisonous, or other gases of all analogous liquids, materials, or devices, unquote, to include bacteriological methods. But that's not the intended use of white phosphorus. It's not to be asphyxiating or poisonous. Like, they say that they're using it as a smokescreen. They say they're using it to trace enemies.
Quote, unquote.
Right.
Like, I feel like...
Yeah. The open secret, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to talk about how it's being used. Mm-hmm. And so none of that matters when World War II rolls around, and the use of white phosphorus increased considerably by British and American forces. Between 1942 and 1945, the United States Chemical Warfare Services of the Army purchased 2 million pounds of white phosphorus. Algiers, Bizerte, and Naples were able to obscure their harbors from German bombs. American paratroopers dropped from planes in plumes of smoke that protected them from Japanese guns in New Guinea. And the troops on the beaches, rivers, and highways of Italy, France, and Germany were able to conduct their duties under a phosphorus shield. Though the Germans lacked a large supply of white phosphorus, so their screens were produced with sulfuric acid instead.
No!
And this is also not to say that the Germans didn't have any form of phosphorus at all. They did have enough of the nerve agent taboon to kill every living person on Earth, but didn't use it for fear of retaliation on behalf of the Allies. And that's another story I just do not have time to get into right now. The white phosphorus bombs were used to set fire to buildings and cane fields and to drive enemies from hiding spots. U.S. Navy vessels threw bombs at installations on the shores of Saipan and Eniwetok, and no doubt caused some to fall into the ocean. Some shells were filled with rubber gel that would disperse the white phosphorus even further, and these were called plasticized white phosphorus. And the U.S. produced nearly 900,000 pounds of it in 1945.
See, but like 2 million pounds, 900,000 pounds. Like, why do we need this much? We don't need this much. We don't. Much. Nobody needs that much. Nobody needs that much.
No. When the British Army retreated to Dunkirk in May 1940, they had to leave their weapons behind. The Germans followed them, initiating the Battle of Britain, and so the British government ordered the production of millions of Molotov cocktails, which actually earned its name the year before when the Finns named their burn bottles after the Soviet foreign minister, I don't know why I thought I could pronounce this, Vyacheslav Molotov, who signed a non-aggression pact between Germany and the USSR. And I didn't know that Molotov cocktails were ever formally made and not just clandestinely made.
Right.
But the British Molotovs were solutions of phosphorus dissolved in benzene, and the main phosphorus producer in the country made 250,000 of them a week, using whatever bottles were available to them, including beer and milk bottles. More than 7 million were made over 2 years and were stored in crates and streams for safety, but since many of them were never used, they would break away and float down streams to wash up on shores for years afterward.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yep. And the phosphorus bombs that they used were heavy. They were typically around 30 pounds, and they were devastating as incendiary devices because white phosphorus burns at nearly 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to burn metal. They could penetrate deep into buildings to scatter their molten load that was nearly impossible to put out. The British Lancaster bomber carried 4,000 pounds of high explosives, 960 of the lighter magnesium bombs, and 64 phosphorus bombs in its payload. In 1943, these heavily burdened planes were flown over Hamburg, Germany's second largest city with a population of 1.75 million people and their largest seaport. Their attack was codenamed Operation Gomorrah. Over 8 nights, and this is where it gets real dark. This is the darkest, potentially the darkest part of this episode. The British and American Air Forces dropped 7,000 tons of high explosives, 1.5 million magnesium bombs, and 1,900 tons of phosphorus incendiaries onto a sleeping city that only had bomb shelters sufficient for protecting 378,000. So most residents had to hide in their reinforced cellars.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why are some humans so evil?
I don't know. I don't know. This really makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder.
Yeah, like who was hurt so bad that they were like, you know what we need to do?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a question that I think is asked a lot when you're like, why did World War II go the way that it went? Well, there was World War I, and before that, what was going on? And it's just like,
yeah,
y'all need therapy.
Literally, like, fuck. Get help.
In Hamburg, huge fireballs engulfed the city while molten phosphorus dripped down buildings, giving the illusion that it was literally raining hellfire. Phosphorus indicators covered the sky with red smoke as they burned while plummeting to the ground. Residents were splashed with phosphorus that literally melted their faces off. On the third night of bombing, after 3,000 tons of bombs were dropped, a firestorm started, whipping the chunks of flaming phosphorus and magnesium with hurricane-force winds. And mind you, this is while it's burning away the oxygen and while it's creating that pentoxide.
Mm-hmm.
Buildings collapsed in the inferno, trapping anyone who remained in their cellars, and the intense heat consumed again, the oxygen of the entire surrounding area of this city. People splashed with molten phosphorus ran to the canals to seek relief for their wounds, but in the chaos of the destruction, there was none to be found as the skin melted from their bodies, save the mercy of a bullet from armed soldiers sent to cordon off the dead zone of the firestorm. The Hamburg Zoo was destroyed and many of its rare animals were killed, along with approximately 37,000 men, women, and children, some of whom died trapped under the 40 million tons of rubble the city was reduced to. But the horrors of white phosphorus did not end for Hamburg in 1943. In August of 2017, a 41-year-old woman was beachcombing along the banks of the Elbe when she picked up a yellowy rock that she thought was amber. She put it in her jacket pocket, laid her jacket down, and her pocket blew up. Rather than a piece of amber, she'd mistakenly picked up a leftover piece of white phosphorus, very likely from the bombing of Hamburg in World War II. Although, it really could have been just from about any white phosphorus that we've dumped into the ocean. After the war was over, the British government dumped their remaining phosphorus bombs into a deep channel off the coast of Scotland. More than 4,500 of the rusty munitions began washing up on the beaches by the mid-90s.
Wow. The gift that keeps on giving. That's fucked up.
Around the same time, the beachcomber's jacket caught fire in Germany. Another woman was injured even more grievously after collecting rocks on the beach in Tel Aviv. The woman and her daughter went home with their findings wrapped in a wet paper towel, and when the daughter unwrapped them, she found a strange yellow rock, which she showed to her mother. The rock began smoking and heating up in the mother's hand as it dried, so she dropped the rock, which landed on her leg and foot, causing severe burns. Then the couch ignited, and soon the whole apartment was engulfed in flames. At the hospital, the mother was treated for deep burns on her calf and full-thickness burns to her foot. And I've included the pictures here. So would you like to describe what you see?
I mean, the wounds on her hands look deep, but in comparison to the wounds on her legs and foot, like, you could have told me that, like, a shark bit her.
Yeah, or that, like somebody held a curling iron to her. For, like,
that's what I was just going to say. Like, hot metal and did not let it go. Like, this is bad. Like,
and this is just, like, a moment. This is just a moment of it falling down her leg. Yeah.
Right. Like, that is actually insane. Like, I mean, some of the, like, on her legs, some of these look like at least a half-inch deep.
They're pretty bad. Yeah,
they're pretty deep. And I can't even imagine how deep like on her foot.
Yeah.
Because I think that the white stuff is something medical that they've added. Yeah. Like her foot's gone. Like there's like a 3 to 4 inch chunk of her foot that is just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is actually insane.
Yeah. Like the white phosphorus found in Hamburg, this could have washed up from just about anywhere in the ocean. But realistically, it probably came from Israeli naval training exercises or in their attacks on Lebanon in 2006, because despite the horrors of World War II and the firebombing of Hamburg, white phosphorus is still used by some military forces. And you might be wondering, why? Why did we not stop that? Because I was wondering, how did we not stop that?
Why is this still happening?
Yeah, well, the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1993 is a total ban on development, production, stockpiling, retaining, or transferring chemical weapons, which are toxic chemicals and their precursors designed to cause death or harm through their toxic properties.
Okay, this all sounds good.
It's
so why?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
It's signed by all 193 UN member countries, signed but not ratified by Israel, and not signed or acceded to by Egypt, North Korea, or South Sudan. Specifically, the convention defines a toxic chemical as, quote, any chemical through which its chemical action on life processes can cause death, temporary incapacitation, or permanent harm to humans or animals. And I swear I'm getting there. We all know that the dose makes the poison. But I think that we generally understand what they're getting at. Like, we could say, sure, white phosphorus seems to fit in here. But what they're saying with the any chemical through which its chemical action can cause death, like, we know water can do that. We know white phosphorus can do that.
Right.
They're talking about chlorine gas, mustard gas, nerve agents. We get that. We get that these are the really potent poisons people think of when they think of poisons. This is why I think it's weird that the convention wasn't signed till after I was born, because don't you think they would have gotten on this after World War II?
Yeah. Like, hello?
Yes.
What are we doing, guys?
Why did it take so long?
Literally.
Yeah.
Like, was that not enough?
I know.
Like, tens of thousands of people dying and other, like, how many more,
right,
suffered from it.
Right. And so the reason that white phosphorus is not considered a chemical weapon here is because its toxicity is secondary to its use as a smokescreen and even as an incendiary device, which are not covered by the chemical weapons conventions. And now, I want to be clear. I think it should be. I think this is a loophole. But I'm also
loopholes. So loopholes are usually like when I think of loopholes, I'm like, oh, like some kind of like strategic, like legal, snaking around, whatever. It's a loophole. But like this loophole's deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels intentional in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just like
if it wasn't intentional.
Or it feels like whoever wrote this, their hands were bound by something. So maybe not intentional on the part of the people who had good intentions with the chemical weapons convention, but by other people who got involved.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think this is great. And I'm also upset at the use of white phosphorus as an incendiary weapon because I think personally that violates the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons of 1980. And I hate how these are named. There's no way to shorten them nicely. So this is the CCWC, not the CWC, which is the Chemical Weapons Convention.
Okay.
But this 1980 convention, it prohibits weapons like flamethrowers, not weapons which produce smoke and are, again, incidentally incendiary.
That's very strategic language.
Yes, yeah. The United States is signed on to this convention. Israel accedes to it. And so people were pretty upset when it was revealed, kind of casually actually, in a 2005 article in the U.S. Army's Field Artillery magazine, that the U.S. used white phosphorus in Fallujah in 2004. After bloggers discovered this article in the magazine, the Pentagon denied, then admitted that it had used white phosphorus. And that contradicted a statement from a U.S. ambassador who claimed,
U.S. forces participating in Operation Iraqi Freedom continue to use appropriate, lawful, conventional weapons against legitimate targets. U.S. forces do not use napalm or white phosphorus as weapons.
But it is interesting that napalm and white phosphorus are kind of like said together.
They're buddies.
Yeah, they're buddies. Ugh. And the article that started this whole thing clearly stated that the Army and Marines were using a technique called shake and bake, where they used both.
Oh, God.
They love stupid shit like this. But they were using both white phosphorus and high explosives to fire into buildings as direct munitions.
Wow.
They were not simply using it for smoke screens or to smoke out combatants from hiding spots. And this is a violation of the CCWC from 1980 because it defines incendiary weapons as
any weapon or munition which is primarily designed to set fire to objects or to cause burn injury to persons through the action of flame, heat, or a combination thereof, produced by a chemical reaction of a substance delivered on a target. Guys,
that is white phosphorus.
That is... Hello?
Yeah.
Anybody home?
Yeah.
Wow.
So 3 years after Israel attacked Lebanon with white phosphorus, they fired more shells into the Gaza Strip during the active war in Gaza in 2009. Even if the prior attacks in Lebanon could somehow be justified as necessary for war, which is what proponents argued, this 2009 attack was absolutely a violation of not just the CCWC, but also humanitarian law, which states that incendiary weapons may never be used against civilians or even near them. In 2010, the Israeli army, the IDF, reported to the UN that they would restrict their use of white phosphorus to avoid civilians. However, that same year, 1,400 Palestinians and 13 Israelis were killed in a 3-week conflict that also involved a UN compound burning down after it was hit with white phosphorus. In 2013, Israel again said that they would restrict their use of white phosphorus, this time by no longer using artillery shells with white phosphorus to create smoke screens. But Israel is, unfortunately, far from the only country using white phosphorus to commit war crimes in violation of humanitarian law.
Who else?
Syria accused Turkey of attacking children with white phosphorus in 2017. Russia allegedly attacked civilian-occupied areas of Mariupol and Bakhmut with white phosphorus in 2022 and 2023, despite that Russia actually is a signatory on the CCWC. And I think that no one should ever have white phosphorus used against them. But
No.
I also take great issue with the fact that I, as a U.S. citizen, have funded the U.S. and Israel in using white phosphorus against citizens in Israel's genocide on Gaza, because that's what my fucking tax dollars are going toward. In their reaction to the October 11th attacks in 2023, Israel resumed their use of white phosphorus against Gaza and Lebanon in civilian-occupied areas by employing artillery shells made in the U.S. between 1989 and 1992. Like, we found all of the information. There are... If you go to the articles that are going to be listed in this episode, there are pictures of the parts that are, I think they were about to be sent out by Israel. There's pictures that they found in the field, and they have all of the information to show when and where these were made.
Wow.
After the attack on Dera on October 16th, citizens were trapped in their homes for hours to hide from the thick white smoke, if their homes and cars weren't burning. And they reported respiratory problems for days after. And Israel denied using white phosphorus here and maintained that they were acting in accordance with international law, and that this is how they would continue to act. And they weren't lying about at least one of those things. As late as March of this year, 2026, nearly 3 years into this war, this genocide, Human Rights Watch found evidence that Israel attacked residential areas of southern Lebanon with white phosphorus in direct violation of the CWCC and humanitarian law, and they set fire to at least 2 homes.
Oh my gosh. Can anything be done?
Or
is it just like you did a bad and we are declaring that?
I don't know because
knock
it's
it
like,
off. Please. Kindly.
I don't know. Because, like,
wow.
I'm going to say this later, but there has to be teeth, right? And there's just no teeth when it comes to the U.S. and when it comes to Israel. And, like, I wonder why that is. So, Human Rights Watch also determined that Israel used white phosphorus 250 times between October 2023 and November 2024 to scorch earth nearly 5,000 acres of southern Lebanon, including dense forests, agricultural areas, and residential areas, which are specifically protected by humanitarian law.
Wow. This is impressively diabolical. Like, I thought the genocide was bad, right? Like, it's obviously terrible, disgusting, awful, but this takes it to a different level.
I think if people knew this, like if it was like, hey, Israel's firing white phosphorus into crowded civilian areas, and like this is what white phosphorus does. I think if people had that kind of understanding, they wouldn't say like, oh, it's a war in Gaza. They'd be like, no, that's a genocide.
Right.
Like firing molten fucking phosphorus that can melt your face off at areas with children
and suck up all the air.
Yes.
Like this stuff is like kind of crazy.
Yeah, and people, it's just a normalized. Like there's the propaganda that like, oh, it's just used as a smoke screen, and like it's not being used as a chemical weapon, and it's not being used as an incendiary. Okay, but it can. It has those effects, and it is being used that way.
Right.
And these violations might mean something if the U.S. wasn't consistently preventing the UN from taking action against Israel's war crimes. and if we weren't directly supporting them with funds and munitions.
Yeah, literally, here, would you like some money for your white phosphorus adventures?
Yeah. Saying, like,
fuck.
Like, no, they need money. Like, you know, the IPAC, they need to have money. We need to protect our friends in Israel. And it's like, our friends in Israel, quote unquote, are killing Palestinian kids. Like, it's mostly children who have died in this genocide.
I know. It's absolutely evil. Like,
it is.
There's no other word for it. Like,
and it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing to just be a citizen and be like, am I supposed to just shout to the sky? Am I supposed to go to this No Kings protest that, like, it feels directionless? It just feels like I'm still shouting into the sky. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, if they're going to use our tax dollars, and if you're in the U.S. or the U.K.
hurt their wallet.
Or Germany, you gotta hit them where it will hurt. So there is a movement. It's a Palestinian-led movement called BDS, and it's inspired by South African anti-apartheid movements. And it urges Israel to comply with international law by hitting them in their wallet. They organize boycotts, divestment, and sanctions of Israel and its supporters. And so it might not feel like you're doing a lot to, you know, go get a coffee somewhere else, or, like, get the King Soopers version of Coke rather than Coca-Cola.
But maybe it is.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you can do, is to be like, I'm going to try to divest from Disney and McDonald's. Like, if you don't want to support white phosphorus, you can go without a Big Mac, you know?
Right.
And, I mean, you can pressure your representatives to do something to stop support for Israel and any other country that uses white phosphorus, and to try. And I think it's important because they might already be, like, bought into, like, oh, well, we have to defend Israel, and to say you don't want to defend Israel is anti-Semitic. Like, there's already all that, right?
I
but
know.
I think the thing that we can still get to these people with is if you feel like calling your representatives is something within your power that feels like you can do it and it'll do something, tell them to give more teeth to weapons conventions, and for like the U.S. and Israel and violators of these conventions to face something rather than just a slap on the hand or nothing at all. Like, I think
literally anything more than a call out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're doing the bad thing. Okay, and what? Like, what happens now? They got called out, and then they're gonna go kill more people and make them suffer, like, unimaginably.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So, yeah. So, I mean, there might still be some hope that we can do, but it is rough out there. This is what they're doing, and I'm sorry that now you know that we came out of our hiatus to inform you about these things.
I mean, it's good to know, because when you asked me which episode I wanted you to research, I was intrigued, because I had heard of how devastating it was, but I didn't know the intricacies or its history, and so this was quite enlightening. Quite enlightening.
Thank you.
And definitely dark.
Yeah.
Per usual.
Per usual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any final housekeeping that we should mention? Now we've gotten to the end. We've just got our good friends here with us to listen.
Well, thanks for staying. We missed doing this. We missed y'all.
We did. It was fun to get back into this. I was like, oh yeah, I remember really enjoying this. It's just hard to, like, do this and also write a novel and also be marketing another novel.
Yeah. Do you maybe want to share with listeners about what you've been doing?
Sure. I finished a novel, and so now that's being queried to agents. And I'm working on a short story collection now because I got to keep busy all the time and never stop. And my novel Island X is being released July 7th, and I'm going to go on a book tour this summer.
Oh my God. You may be coming to a city near you.
Yes, especially if you're in Colorado. It'll probably come to your city if you're in Colorado.
Coming to a city near you in beautiful, colorful Colorado.
Exactly. Yeah, so I've been keeping busy. Go ahead and follow me over at Marissa Yarrow, and you can see what I've mostly been doing. But yeah, I really did miss doing this. It's nice to put on my chemist brain again and not just make up shit in my head, which is all writing feels like.
Well, when you put it like that, I think that's discounting your wordsmithing.
Oh, thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
So, making stuff in my head. I mean, yes, you do make it up in your head, but the way you do it is quite wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
But I've also been enjoying, we've been playing a lot of Stardew on Wednesdays instead of recording, and that's been good. You guys, we are so good at Stardew Valley.
We're basically professional Stardew Valley players.
We are kind of speed running it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Honestly.
Well, yeah, there's no Patreon, so this is all that's being put out. There's no bonus episodes coming. I can't hold myself to a schedule like that, but thank you all for hanging in there for us, and do keep an eye out for more episodes to come, because there will be more episodes. I just don't know when.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, follow, subscribe, and review us everywhere you get your podcasts.
For more Lethal Dose content, you can find us at Lethal Dose Pod on Instagram, Tumblr, and TikTok.
For an overdose of content, subscribe on Patreon for exclusive episodes and much more.
The show theme is Look Far by our dear wizard friend Fogweaver. More of their music can be found on bandcamp.com.
Lethal Dose is created, researched, produced, and edited by Kayla Woods and Venus Stay safe, and remember,
the dose makes the poison.